All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with this demo. So thank you for taking the time to watch the demo of QuickBooks Enterprise. My name is Marjorie Adams and I work with Fourlane. And Fourlane is a company that has the largest QuickBooks Enterprise customer base than any other company out there, so you're definitely in the right place. So after the demo, of course, we're going to have a consultation so that we can touch on any additional questions you have. Not training session, right? It's more of, does the product do this? Does the product do that? A lot of the times what come out of those sessions are that we say, yes, it does. And obviously our company can help you to figure out the appropriate workflow for you. And we do that with consulting hours, of course. Okay, our stickiness rating here at Fourlane is incredibly high. We have, less than a handful of returns a year, and for being the highest reseller of the product and less than a handful of returns, you can tell we're very successful with getting our customers up and running in QuickBooks. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to touch on a couple things. So first of all, this is QuickBooks. If you haven't seen it before, QuickBooks Enterprise looks very similar to some of the other products that QuickBooks has. Where QuickBooks Enterprise is going to, be different, of course, is first, you can go above 5 users. Okay. Second, the file size is used to holding a lot more data. They have advanced inventory features in the Enterprise solutions. One of the ones that, the biggest ones why people move to Enterprise from some of the other Intuit products is security. So in QuickBooks Enterprise, you can go in and say you have access to, let's say, view, create, receive items or item receipts, but you can't delete them. Okay, and maybe you can view POs, but you can't create, modify, or delete them or print them, as an example. So it's a higher level of security than any other version of QuickBooks, and we see a lot of people moving up for that reason alone. Okay. In Enterprise, you also can have as many files as you want. So you can have as many files as your server can hold. You can have 2 company files open at the same time as well. So where that's really nice is, let's say you have, your company that you're working in, manufacturing, and then you have a company that's a separate LLC that owns the building, right? So you can be in both of those company files at the same time. We do suggest changing the color scheme, so you can see this one's a nice green file. We can change the color scheme inside the files. Maybe the other one's red, so you know which file you're in. Okay. All right, so in this demo, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a sample workflow using each of these different transaction types and talk about first on the sales perspective, then we'll move into the purchasing perspective, and we're going to touch a little bit on the BOMs. So the one thing about QuickBooks that's really important to understand is that QuickBooks can be used, right? It's used by something like 80 to 90% of all companies in the United States. So of course, whatever company type you are, there may be some features in here that you won't be using that we're talking about today, but it's important to know that it's there, to know what it's capable of, to understand that it's a robust enough product for you. Okay? All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. So I'm going to start at the estimates, and I'm going to make this a little larger. Okay, so on the estimate stage or the quoting stage here, first of all, we start, every time you start a transaction, it's going to put the cursor in one of the fields, and you can tab or hit enter to move between the fields. So I'm going to start typing a customer. Once I start typing a name, then the customer will pull up as well as any jobs that are important for that customer. So the jobs are either sub-locations, maybe they're actual jobs, different jobs you're working on, right? New development, new remodel. They can also be, as an example, different customer, like so Thompson Lighting stores, maybe they have a purchaser on the West Coast and a purchaser on the East Coast, so you can segment them that way. The really nice part about using jobs is that it allows you to run profitability reports at the customer level, right? So Thompson Lighting level, and at each of the individual job levels. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and choose a job and hit tab. We do have a class field in QuickBooks. Your class field is similar to your department field. So what you're used to seeing in some other products is, we have rent for department 1 is account number 6000-001. Rent for department 2 is 6000-002. In QuickBooks, we leave it as just rent is 6,000, and then you use the class feature to enable you to segment the different areas of the business. So if I go back and expand it, what we're left with when we use classes, right, is our profit and loss by class, okay? And we'll definitely be able to talk you through what's the best way to use that feature in QuickBooks. You can have multiple templates set up in QuickBooks, and I'm talking about this on the quote right now, but of course you could have multiple templates at the PO level, at the invoice level. So you can have multiple templates set up. When you customize your templates, it's very simple to do. We'll go through and make sure you're trained on this, but let's say internally you use the term estimate instead of quote. Once you understand how to use it, you, as long as you have permissions to, can go in and change it to say estimate on your templates there. Okay. So again, just tabbing through the fields, if we had additional fields that we wanted to show up, we can add those additional fields by customizing our template. We can choose to show them on the screen, meaning we just see them internally when we're in QuickBooks here, or we can choose to add them when we print out copies, like customer-facing copies. All right. Okay, moving down to the most important area, the items. So in QuickBooks, we have several different item types. We have service items, inventory parts, non-inventory parts, other charges, group items. So there's a lot of different items in QuickBooks that you can use, different item types. We're going to focus on an inventory part today because it's kind of the most extensive. Okay, so when you're using other item types, like a service item as an example, it still works similar to inventory, right? Except for that when you buy it, it hits your P&L, and when you sell it, it hits your P&L. Inventory is different, obviously, because when you buy it, it hits an asset account, right, on your balance sheet. And then when you sell it, it hits, it lowers your asset and raises your cost of goods sold and raises your sales at the same time. So, all right, so I'm going to choose this 5029. One thing that's really nice that QuickBooks has is they do have a find and select in here. And so when you're looking through your items list, if you don't really know what you're looking for, maybe this is a new salesperson, they can do find and select. They can go, oh, I know it has ground, and then they find everything. So it searches through all item fields for anything that has ground. If they wanted to narrow it down further from there, they could say, oh, wait, I know it's indoor ground, and obviously, I only have a couple on this list, so it's not that hard to narrow it down. But if you had a huge, extensive items list, that can be extremely helpful. Also, if you wanted to add several parts at one time, right, you could use that feature to add several parts at one time. So if I said I wanted to add everything that had ground in it, I would say OK, and then add those selected items. Okay, so very easy. All right, when we're going through and adding new items, I'll just take you through that real quick. So again, you can see in the service side here, item name, we can use barcode numbers in enterprise, units of measure, we have an expense account and an income account. Okay, but I'm really going to focus again on inventory because it's more detailed. So inventory part, same thing, item name or number. This is an alphanumeric field here. Manufacturer's part number can go in there. Same thing, units of measure. We can choose our cost of goods sold account. So when we sell this product, what cost of goods sold account is going to be affected. Same with which income account. And then, of course, which asset account it's going to hit when we purchase the product. We can have global reorder points or reorder points if you don't have multiple inventory sites, where you put in here, I want to order, once I get below 100, trigger me to order. And you can also use maximum. So once I get below 100, bring me back up to 1,000. Okay. We do have custom fields that we can set up. So if you don't have a field here, you don't see a field here for something that you need to track when it comes to your inventory parts, we can set those up here. You can keep notes on inventory parts as well. These are internal notes, right? So if you, say, if my preferred vendor runs out, I always buy this part from Cecil Lockworks. But in the notes area there, I can keep track of if Cecil Lock works this out, perhaps what other vendors I can call. You can't have markups on items, so you can maintain a fixed markup. So if the cost changes, automatically update my sales price. And then of course we can have lot numbers or serial numbers, and then we can have quantity discounts. Okay. And we'll help you with getting all this set up. Obviously, we just like to run through this so you understand what it's capable of doing. Okay. All right. So once I put any inventory part on any transaction in QuickBooks, I'm always going to have this little graph here on the side, and this graph is going to tell me some really important information. So it'll tell me, first of all, quantity on hand by location. So if I have multiple locations, it's also going to tell me quantity on hand, like as a whole globally, right? Quantity I have on a sales order, which we'll talk about in a little bit. How many are reserved for assemblies, which means this is a component that goes into some finished goods, and therefore how many I have available for sale, and then how many are on purchase orders. So right now, if a customer is calling me and saying, I would like to purchase these, I'd say, you know what, it may be a minute before we can ship them out because we do have a lot of customers' orders, but we are expecting we are expecting this product to be in stock on October 7th, right? So you have all those details here. And if you needed to drill down further into it, you can double click on it, see the PO, right? So there's a lot of information available right there for you. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say we're ordering 50 of this product, okay? So when I order 50 of this product, again, on an estimate, it doesn't do anything. It is just going to save that this is a quote that we're sending out, right? This customer hasn't said they're going to buy. They haven't said that they want to, that they haven't committed to us, basically. So that's what this is. All right. So when I hit save here, then it does not affect or drive demand for inventory at all. Okay. A couple other fields that you want to note here. So we do have the ability on the estimate stage to put in a base rate, as well as an amount and a markup. You don't have to have all these fields here. We can get rid of them if you want to. If you just want to have the sales price on it, then that's fine as well. Okay. On any transaction in QuickBooks, you're always going to have this little bar up top that's helpful, useful pieces of information or places to go from this transaction. From here you can see I can print, I can email out of the system. If I do email from the system, it will go onto the Customer Center in the Sent Email tab. Okay, I can create a copy of, so if they say, oh, you know what, can I have another quote that says the exact same thing, but I want this change and this change, this change, I can create a copy of the original estimate. So it's basically a duplicate, edit it, and then send it out to the customer. In all areas of QuickBooks, I can attach documents. So if they sent me over an RFQ for this, for this estimate, I can attach it in there. If they send me over a PO later, I can attach it. And that's at the transaction level as well as, again, the list level. So at the list level, maybe a customer sends over a resale certificate. We want to keep a copy of it in file. We can attach it right to the customer or the job themselves versus an individual transaction. Okay. And then we also have a little drop down on the side. This drop down is meant to be helpful for things, like, phone numbers, email addresses. If they have any open balances, notice it's a hyperlink, so it'll drill down into the details there. If they had any past due balances, it would be in red. Recent transactions, and then we have notes down below here that we can keep. Again, internal notes. Okay. All right. So now that you know a little bit of all these different features, we're going to talk more workflow now. Okay, so this customer now is ready to purchase. All right, so the appropriate workflow when it comes to inventory is we do use what's called a sales order in QuickBooks, right? So we go from the estimate to the sales order stage. If this is a construction client where we're not keeping track of inventory, or maybe a professional services client, probably you're just going to go from estimate to invoice. Okay, so you don't even have to start at estimate. I can go straight to invoice if I want to, but just to understand the flow there. And again, we'll help you work that out if you decide this is the right product. So from the estimate, I'm going to go ahead and create a sales order. All right. So before I hit save, so everything in QuickBooks is based on hitting the save button, okay? So it's not posted until I hit save. So I'm going to go ahead and, before I hit save, I'm going to look at this graph again to remind us, right? We had negative 18 available. Now this customer wants to order 50. As soon as I hit save here, the sales order is now going to drive demand for product, right? It doesn't relieve this inventory from my system yet, but now I have quantity available of negative 68, right? Because 50 more went onto a sales order. All right, so again, it drives demand for product. Okay, from this stage, what we can do is we can come in and print out our packing slip, our pick ticket, our shipping label. We do connect to UPS, USPS, and FedEx. If you have your own, WorldShip account or whatever that you already use, there are some connector tools that will fit and connect you into QuickBooks as well. Okay. All right, so from the sales order stage, I can go ahead then and ship it out. We do have a sales order fulfillment worksheet in QuickBooks, and the sales order fulfillment worksheet, just so you're aware too, so this is in a high res, so it usually isn't this stacked. Usually you can see more details on here, but because we want to record in a high resolution, it looks a little scrunched. But basically, you come in here to the sales order fulfillment screen, and it tells you, based on how you want them sorted, right? I want it sorted by the date the sales order was entered, or maybe I want to sort it by what can be fulfilled first, right? So up top here, everything that's green means that it can be fulfilled fully. We have enough quantity on hand. Anything that is marked as yellow can be partially filled, okay? And then of course anything that's marked with a big X cannot be fulfilled at all. All right? And we can print out our pick tickets and our packing slips, right? Several at a time by selecting all of those there. Okay. All right. So coming back into here, once we ship the product out, that's when we create the invoice. Okay. At the invoice stage here, so this is where in QuickBooks we do not have batch posting. I know that kind of seems crazy for some people who are moving from outside systems. Once you hit the save button, it does all the work for you. So usually when our customers are coming from an outside system that does use batch posting, it takes them a couple days to realize that no, QuickBooks really is doing all the work for you. So you hit save. Oops, of course, I have to update. It forces me, right? Since I have multiple warehouses turned on, I have to choose which warehouse and bin I'm pulling from. So when you hit save, it posts not only to my AR subledger, right? So it also updates my inventory. It also updates my general ledger at the same time, okay? So if I made a mistake on this transaction, let me go ahead and get rid of some of these columns. You can see how easy it is to get rid of some of these. I'm going to get rid of all the sales order columns for now. So if I made a mistake on this transaction, as long as I had permissions to modify invoices, I can go back and fix it. So I'm going to show you what that looks like, okay? So again, I hit save. Right now, right, I have 327 quantity on hand. My quantity available stays the same. It's just the quantity on hand changed, right? It went down by 50. Before it was 377, okay? Now if I made a mistake on here again, so let's go ahead and look at our AR aging summary report, and I'm just going to go to the bottom, so 53,845, and I'm also going to pull up my balance sheet report, right? So 53,845 right there. Now let's pretend I made a mistake right on this, and the cost should have been $45 each. Well, let's make it pretty significant. Let's say $400 each, so it's really significant so you can see. Once I hit save here again, notice that these two reports mention we need refresh needed. If I go look at my AR aging, it's now raised by that variance. Now it's 72,000. As well, my balance sheet is at 72,000. So QuickBooks balances itself to the GL, so it's a lot easier to use. So yeah. A little bit hard sometimes if you're used to the batch posting, but QuickBooks does a great job with making sure to maintain that there. All right. So now that we have our invoice in the system, there's a couple ways that we can get paid. The first way, which is incredibly helpful, is that in QuickBooks you do have the ability to let your customers pay you online. So you have to enable it at the customer level. You can decide if they can pay you by credit card or by ACH, or both, either one. And essentially what happens is you send them a copy of the invoice. In the email it'll have a Pay Now link. Now of course that Pay Now link is valid for, I think it's like 60 days or something, but that Pay Now link is valid, so they don't have to pay you right immediately, but they know, when I pay you in 30 days I'm going to click that Pay Now link. What's nice about it is that they can click that link, they go online, and they could submit the payment, and you don't have to handle their credit card information at all, which is really nice, okay? What we have seen is that with people who are using the Pay Now button, they tend to get paid faster because it's easier for them to get paid, right? They don't have to cut a check and wait for the boss to sign it and everything like that, so it makes it a lot easier. So definitely talk to your rep about that feature if it's something you're interested in. And then what's nice about it is if they do pay online daily or whatever, 5 times a day if you want to, you can sync the payments into QuickBooks. And so what will happen is you log into QuickBooks, it warns you, hey, you have some payments that were made online, and it syncs in and it marks all of the invoices that were paid as paid. You don't have to do it. And it tells you what your deposit will be in your bank. So let's say you processed 4 or 5 cards in the office and then 3 customers paid you online. It's going to tell you your deposit will be $8,500, and these are the invoices that were paid with that $8,500 deposit. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So that's one way, okay? Another way that you can receive a payment, you can store credit card numbers on file. So if you, and it is PCI compliant, so if you wanted to if they said just charge the card on file, you can go ahead and do that. Of course, then also you have your receive payments screen. So if I were in here, right, I created my invoices, now I'm going to follow my little pathway and receive my payments. At the receive payments screen, what's nice here, so you can receive cash, check, credit card, e-check. If you had other payment types, you just have to add those payment methods in here. So if you were taking a credit card again over the phone, you'd be able to put that credit card payment in here. QuickBooks does have the ability to set up reoccurring charges as well for some of those customers out there who have that. Maybe they have an HVAC company as an example, and they charge their customer a certain maintenance fee every month or every 6 months or something. You can set that up as well. All right, so when I come in here and I receive my payment, so I'm just going to pretend it's a check for now. If they short paid me for whatever reason, $1, let's say, I can leave it as an underpayment in there and try to collect that $1, or I also have the option to write off that $1 right now, so it's not sitting there on my AR report forever. Okay. All right. And then once we receive our payments, we go ahead to our record deposit screen, and it's going to pop up here and check off all of our different checks that we have. So we can say I'm going to deposit all these checks, say okay, and then deposit it here. On this screen as well, if you wanted to add additional checks, you can. So let's say you got a refund from your insurance company or something, we can add those additional checks here as well. Okay. All right. When it comes to refunds and credits, the easiest way, if you have to create a credit memo, so customers returning something, is just to open up the original transaction and hit refund or credit. That way the entire the entire thing comes across. So if you had 50 lines as an example, the entire thing would come across, and then you can just edit, if they were only returning 25. With the return receipts, you can give the credit or use the credit to give a refund. So you can cut a check. If they paid you by credit card, you can refund it to their credit card. You can apply it to an invoice. So if they have any other open invoices with you, you can apply it. Or you can just leave it in there for use in the future. Okay. All right. Okay, so that's kind of the AR process in QuickBooks. sure there's a lot of questions in there. One thing I didn't mention is that QuickBooks does have a collection center, which is extremely helpful. So the collection center assists us with doing collections. Now this is a sample file, so it thinks it's 2020 right now, so there's no overdue invoices. But if you had any overdue invoices, they would be showing up here. If you had any almost due invoices, they would be showing up here. Okay, so this would look similar on the overdue tab. Almost due is something that you set. You decide what that means. It means within 14 days, within 7 days, whatever it is. Okay. What's nice about this is you can go in here, and if you had this set up to be emailed, you could check a little box up top and mass email PDF copies out to everybody, and with a little email message, right? Hey, just wanted to remind you this, your invoices are becoming due in the next 15 days. So you can definitely have that email preset as well. What's nice about this is if you are going through and making collection calls or sending emails or anything like that, we can keep notes right here in the system. So when I used to do this when I was in private industry, right, I would print out my AR aging report and I would make my little notes on it every week, and then next week I'd come and I'd transcribe my notes to the new one, and it was kind of silly. So now inside of QuickBooks, you can keep those notes in the system so everybody has access to them. So you can see here, on 2/18, I called Doug. He said that the check was in the mail. In April, there was no check. I left a voicemail for Doug. And now here it's July, and I need to really get Doug to pay. So anyway, really helpful to use that collection center in here. Okay. All right, so I'm going to move into purchasing now. So with purchasing, there's several ways to purchase. So you can just go in, again, you don't have to do a purchase order. You can just go receive items if you want to, go in and enter your bills. So you can skip the purchase order phase. But I'm going to talk about doing purchasing, right, the full process for now. So you can, with purchasing, you can just go in and create a purchase order, right? I know what I need to order. I'm going to create a PO for it. The second way that is effective is that from like a sales order as an example or an estimate, I have this create purchase order screen. Okay, so it'll allow me to drop ship to the customer if I choose to as well. And basically it pulls all the information over for me of what I want to order, who my preferred vendor is, what my stated price is that I pay this vendor for this particular product. And of course it picks up for me, since I said I wanted to drop ship, my customer's shipping information, as well as on the line item it ties it to the customer there. Okay, and you can do that, estimate, sales order, etc. The other way that we have for purchasing is when we're dealing with bill of materials. Okay, so if we don't have enough parts on hand to complete this bill of materials, so for this FG2 as an example, I can only make 7.5 of them. So what I can do is I can show my shortage, and then on the shortage report I can auto create POs so that I know what I need to purchase in order to fill this BOM. Okay, so that's fulfilling this one bill of materials. Similar to when I did it from a sales order to a purchase order, right? That was fulfilling for that one sales order. Okay. Now, the most effective way, of course, to purchase is if we're buying for all orders and all BOMs. So the way you do that is we come into our inventory stock status by item report. This stock status by item report gives us some really great information. It tells us our quantity on hand, right? Our quantity on a sales order, and this is for all sales orders, right? Our quantity on all bill of materials. So therefore, what's our quantity available? And we can use quantity available to reorder. So here on my screen, right, I have 100. I want to keep 100 on hand. I am in the hole by -68. Okay. And then I only have 160 on a PO, so it's telling me I need to order 9 more, right, to get me above my 100 number. Now, of course, if I use that maximum, it would tell me I needed to order, 1,000 or 900 or whatever to get me back up to that 1,000 number. Okay. So once we have that, we can go ahead and auto create our POs. When we choose to auto create our POs, it picks up our preferred vendor. It does the calculation for us to bring us back up to either our minimum or maximum. or you can, edit it before we actually send the PO out. So I'm going to go ahead and create a PO for these parts here so we can see what it looks like. So I automatically created this PO. And again, before I send it out to my vendor, I can go in and modify my prices as need, or my quantities as needed, and my price as well, but I can change those quantities so there's some more flat amounts if I want to. Okay. And a PO, similar to an estimate, I can print it, email it, I can create a copy of it, attach documents. I have a little drop down here that gives me information on the vendor, obviously, because this is a purchase transaction. Okay. Okay, so going back to our home screen, now we're going to follow the pathway here. I do have a feature called Enhanced Inventory turned on right now in QuickBooks Enterprise. What that allows me to do is have the item receipt and the bills be separate. So that's something, again, when we decide, you decide this is the product for you, we can decide if that's a necessary thing to turn on. So now it's a couple days later and I'm in the warehouse and I receive a shipment from Paulson's Lighting. It pops up and tells me I have open POs for this vendor, and then I can pull up that PO as well as other POs if they ship several at the same time, and you'd see here all of that information come across, okay, from the PO. If you had any shortage, so I'm going to make this one, whoops, not a 500, I'm going to make it 50. So if you had any shortage for whatever reason, you just edit it there. In QuickBooks, you do have the ability to scan things as well, so you could bloop, 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 so you could count them up. And then, of course, I want to choose a site. Once I choose a site on one line, it'll pre-fill in for me the additional lines. And I have bins turned on in here, so I want to make sure all the bins are filled in. Okay, so, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so when I hit save here, at this point, again, remember that save button, that helps us to know at this point our items are received, our inventory quantities go up, right? If I go back and I look at my POs, then I can see here, like this one's received in full. Let me go here to show this PO. This PO was the one that we had just created earlier, and this one's still showing as open, right? Because I only received 50. If I were not going to receive the additional 50, I can come in and overwrite it and close it. Okay. All right. So again, we have attachments right here. The attachments are great, so if they want to scan in copies of the packing slips, that's really useful information to keep. Then a couple days later, again, I'm in accounts payable and I get a bill from Paulson's Lighting, and it's going to populate for me and say, oh, you have some transactions there. So I'm going to go ahead and receive the bill for the 44459. Again, here, notice that what it does is it picks up for me that I only received 50 of this part. So this is my way to kind of check inside the system, right? If they billed me for 100, I'm only showing that I received 50. I can go back to the warehouse and say, did you count right? Or I can go to Paulson's and say, why are you charging me for 100? Okay. All right. A couple things with bills too. This is probably the most appropriate time to talk about it. With bills, you can memorize the bills. So not on inventory, right? You probably don't have recurring inventory shipped in. Maybe you do. But for things like rent, maybe you can set the bills up and memorize them so that they auto-post for you every month. You can do that with journal entries, maybe some checks you have that auto-post every month. Okay, so we can make sure to get those in there automatically. All right. So once I have the bill in the system, and you can do it either way, right? With enhanced inventory here, I can put the bill in first. So if you guys prepay and then receive the items later, or the items in and then receive the bill later. If we don't use item receipts, then we could bypass that and we just receive the bill, and we would not use enhanced inventory then. So then we continue down the line and we go ahead and pay our bills. With our bill payments here, you just come in, you check which bills you want to pay. There are some filters here so you can narrow down which bills. If you're short paying for any reason, you can edit the amount over here, as well as if you have any discount terms with your vendor, right? 2%, 10, net 30, they would show you which discounts you're eligible to take, and that's all date driven, right? So if I change this date, then it could affect the discounts. So we could pay by check through here. If you did pay it on a credit card, you can mark it as paid on a credit card. We can print checks out of the system. Obviously, we can help you get set up with the right check stock and deposit stock that will work with QuickBooks. Okay. All right. So now that we've paid our bills and we've recorded our deposits, we want to go in and reconcile our accounts. So QuickBooks does connect with most major banks, or I should say most major banks connect with QuickBooks. You know, QuickBooks kind of treats everything out there as they have an open API. They tell everybody out there how to connect to them, and they put it on their plate, right? 'Cause so many people use QuickBooks that, you know, there isn't a bank out there that holds 90% of the market, right? So QuickBooks does have what's called bank feeds. The bank feeds will allow you to download banking information. Some banks also allow you to pay bills through those bank feeds, right? So you can cut checks or you can mark the bill as paid, and then you can say that, you know, it's paid online. The bank will grab that check and cut the check for you. Okay. So with the bank feeds, essentially what happens is you connect to your banks or your credit card accounts, and it downloads those transactions. Obviously, for a checking account, you'd expect most of the transactions are already in QuickBooks. So when it downloads the transaction, it says, oh yeah, this is here, this is here, this is here. But the important part is what's not in QuickBooks yet that has hit your bank. So it'll point out to you, these are all transactions that have hit your bank account, and you know, we don't know what they are, so you need to tell us. With credit card accounts, it's extremely helpful, especially if you have, you know, salespeople out there buying lunches and things like that, because you can download those transactions daily, weekly, so you can start to try to gather receipts faster, right? Hey, you took a trip last week, I need all those receipts, instead of trying to gather them at the end of the month. So it makes reconciling a little bit more smooth at the end of the month. But same thing, you can download the transactions. It tells you what's already in QuickBooks versus what is not. And you can start to train QuickBooks to know what the transactions are. So as an example, if they go to Chevron to get gas, the first time you teach QuickBooks, if you see Chevron, you know, put it to vendor gas or Chevron or whatever you choose the vendor name to be, and it posts to accounts fuel expenses, then the next time it happens, QuickBooks will automatically, you know, allocate those for you. It'll ask you before it does, obviously, but you know, you can just scroll through and mass post all of those transactions, which is really nice. Okay. All right, so then I'm going to touch real quick on bill of materials. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to go into Reconcile. I didn't actually do that part yet. So we go in and we reconcile our banks here. So you choose your bank account you're reconciling, your credit card account you're reconciling. You can reconcile pretty much every balance sheet account in QuickBooks, and we'll help you to learn which accounts you should be reconciling when we, you know, get you set up here. So the statement date, you want to put in your bank statement date. The beginning balance should tie to the beginning balance that your bank statement says. The ending balance will be your ending balance from your bank statement. And then we go through and let me unmark. You just start checking these off, right? This cleared, this cleared, this cleared, this cleared, this cleared, this cleared. You can check and drag if there's several. And then we want to get that difference down there down to 0. Okay, that lets us know we're reconciled. You can sort these columns, right? So if you have having a problem, I have a whole bunch of $25 and I don't know which one, right? You can sort by, and it makes it a little bit easier to navigate and find those things you're looking for. Okay. Once you close your books for the month, QuickBooks does have a closing date password, so you can come in here and set your closing date password. You can reopen your books once they're closed if you have the permissions to. So it's not a hard close where you don't have any access at all. So, you know, that's where the permissions and setting that up appropriately is really important. Okay. You do not have to close your books to run financials. You can run financials at any point throughout the month. I could run financials even if it was July 1st. Show me my P&L and balance sheet for July 1st or for the month of July, you know, even though it's only the 1st. All right, so now I'm going to move over to BOMs. So again, for the people who are not dealing with inventory, you could probably, the only other part that I'm going to go into in just a minute is payroll, but this will be quick. Okay. So we do have the ability, obviously, to adjust quantity value on hand. So you want to make sure, you do periodic physical inventory counts. We can come in and adjust the quantity value on hand in here. When it comes to bill of materials, so essentially when you set up a new inventory assembly, it looks very similar to an inventory item, but we come down here and we have all of our bill of materials that go into making that item. With QuickBooks, we say if you're building to stock, it's really important to use these BOMs. That's the best way to do it. If you're building to order, we have some other ways that may be more effective, right, with those different options. We had a company recently who does cars as an example, and so they have this base model car that they sell, right? So the base model is a build to stock, but then all the options that make the car special and unique are part of the build to order piece, and so we have workflows we can show you on that. But essentially you come in here, you add what parts are going to go into this BOM. You can do inventory parts, you can have sub-assemblies within a finished good assembly if you needed to, non-inventory parts, service charges, right? So if we wanted to include some stated labor or machining costs, we can include those in there as well. Okay. So when we put the bill of materials here on the screen, what it's going to do is pre-fill in for us again everything that goes into that BOM. We can modify it if we needed to on the screen here. We can attach documents, right, print it out so that we can give it out to the shop so they can go do this build type of thing. QuickBooks will tell us how many of these parts we can build based on our quantity on hand. If we try to build more than that, it'll mark it as a pending build. Okay, so it will not allow you to finish out a build until you have the components on hand to complete that build. Okay, so basically it would sit in there as a pending build, similar to like a pending sales order, right? Until I ship it. The pending build, it would sit in here until we either received the components in, or we came back and we said, you know what, I'm only going to build 6 right now because that's all I can build, and then we could mark it as a final build assembly. When you mark it as final, all of the components, the quantity on hand of those components goes away, right? So it would remove 6 from inventory, but then it would put 6 finished good 2 FG2s into inventory. Okay. All right. Okay. So now we're going to talk just briefly about payroll. So you can run payroll through QuickBooks. With Enterprise, you do get some benefits with your payroll subscription. I didn't mention that earlier, but you get a big, some big benefits with your credit card processing as well. QuickBooks does consider you to be a very high value client because you're an enterprise level customer. Okay. One of the highest value clients of any of their customer base out there. So, and they have a lot, right? Okay, so with payroll, you can enter time cards in the system. You can enter them manually through here, or there are some options, right? Some applications where people can enter their time cards online or on their cell phones, and it will sync into QuickBooks. When it comes to paying our employees, basically what we do is we set up all of the payroll information at the employee level, right? So address and contact, any additional information, their payroll information, what their earnings items are, how frequently they get paid, if they have direct deposit, what their taxes are, and if we're going to track PTO. We also can include, of course, any additions or deductions, so 401k, medical deductions, garnishments, etc. can all be set up in here. We can track some employment information through the system as well, which is really nice. Okay, a little HR Lite type of functionality, and then their workers' comp code. Of course, we can also attach documents at the customer level, so if they signed an employee agreement or anything like that, we can attach those documents in here, all right? As well as if we have to do any write-ups or anything like that, we can attach those write-ups in here so we have access to that area, okay? So essentially, when you're creating payroll, you come in here, you start your payroll, and you go through, right, and decide, what their hours are if you don't have time card hours in there already. When you're looking at it, You can see here, so this one we're paying for 40 hours and he's getting paid $15 an hour. He doesn't have any other payroll items, so that's $600 gross, and it takes out all the taxes for us. If you wanted to back into, so let's say you wanted to enter, and this was a bonus, you wanted to give them a $500 bonus and then back into the taxes, you can do that as well. Okay. And it accounts for obviously the employee section and the company section, or the company portion. Okay, so once we pay the payroll, and you can set up your own payment schedules, once a week, semi-monthly, once a month, whatever it is. Then of course we have the ability to pay our liabilities. Okay, so for the state taxes and everything like that, you can file through QuickBooks. You can do e-payments. For some of the additionals, right, you perhaps so things like maybe garnishments, as an example, they require a check. You still have to cut those checks, but it tells you which liabilities are due and when they're due. And then of course we can file our forms, so you can e-file through QuickBooks for your 941, 940s, etc. Okay. Of course, payroll is a lot more extensive when you're talking about setting it up, so there'll be a lot more that goes into it, but I just like to show that it's included in there. All right, so then the last piece again, we're going to talk about reporting. So QuickBooks comes with about 180 something different reports. Those reports are very easy to modify within QuickBooks. So let's say I'm going to start with the profit and loss, and the profit and loss, I want to go ahead and total it by quarter, and I want to do it for the last 2 years, right? Very easy to get to the report you want. I also have the ability to filter these reports, so I can come in here maybe and filter by department, right? We talked about class as your department. So I want to say just for department 1. Okay, so you can really narrow down your reports in here. If you get to a report you really like, you can save it into memorized reports so that other people have access to it, or if it's just you want to save it for your report, you can go up to view, say this is my daily report, and add it right up top here to your icon bar. Okay. All reports you can print, we can email, we can export to Excel, we can create comments on reports here as well. And anytime you are clicking on a report, you can see you have this little magnifying glass here where I can go and drill down to the details. So if I double clicked here, it would give me the details, again segmented out, right? It's totaling by account list here. I can total by other things as well, so there's some manipulation you can do there. And then if I wanted to see the actual the actual transaction, I can drill down even further. So our process when we're working with QuickBooks is always going to be, we are going to show you what QuickBooks can do first, right? So what report can you get to inside of QuickBooks there? They do have the advanced reporting module in Enterprise, which is essentially like a Crystal Reports Writer tool. If you like playing around with reports and you have some, a little bit of ability to maybe work with Excel. If you're really good in Excel, the advanced reporting will probably make good sense to you. So again, we'll help you if you need to build a report that's you can't get there somehow here in QuickBooks. We'll use either the advanced reporting tool or we'll just build the report for you to get you there. Okay. All right, so again, our approach is we're going to show you first what's capable in QuickBooks. The second approach you have to think about with QuickBooks is that there's about 100,000 apps out there that do connect to QuickBooks. So usually if there's something that you're wanting to be able to do, there is something out there that can do it. Now if it's just a piece, right, you just want this little tweak inside of QuickBooks, sometimes we won't recommend an app, right, which will take over a big piece, a lot of things. Usually apps do several things. We do custom services as well here, so custom development applications for customers on top of QuickBooks, so we can help you out with that process as well. So where do we go from here? You watch this demo. I hope that you have dreams about QuickBooks and you're super excited to move into the product. We will have a follow-up consultation call to go over anything that was not covered in case you guys have questions, and then get you set up for the transition. How we'll come up with the plan, right? How are we going to get you into QuickBooks and using it the most effective way for your company? So we really look forward to working with you, and I hope you enjoyed the demo. Thanks so much.